Hello and welcome to this year's first installment of Cyclone InCYders. I'm Taylor Mankle, along with special in-depth analysis from Hawn Wong and Ben Olson here. We're going to start off your show talking some men's basketball, follow that up, talking some Cyclone women's basketball, then get into some gymnastics, and of course cover all headlines across Iowa State athletics. But to start, as we mentioned, Iowa State men's basketball to kick things off. Current score right now, 31-22 in favor of Texas on the road in Austin against the Longhorns. We'll keep you updated throughout the segment on those scores and throughout the program. Now, what we're going to talk about is not this game currently going on first. We're going to look back at a game that was a fantastic game for Iowa State as they went into the Fog and broke down the Jayhawks, who were going into that game number 3 in the nation. A fantastic win, first win in Fog Allen since 2005, if I'm not mistaken, for Iowa State. And now Iowa State is the only team to beat Bill Self twice at his house, being in Fog Allen. So that's a huge game. Let's talk a little bit about the story of the game. Each of you, give me your biggest takeaway from this victory against Kansas. We'll start with you, Ben.
I'm going to have to go ahead with the message that I thought Iowa State sent to the rest of the country, really, and the Big 12 to just say, hey, you know, we haven't got that big win, but you know what? We knew we could do it all along, and then there it was. I felt like we were all waiting to see it. So it was really nice to see that. And then really the other thing was just the seniors. In that game, the leadership from them was just awesome. I know Matt didn't have the best game, but he's been carrying us for the past 3 games, so it was just great to see, and I feel a lot better about what's going to happen later in the season now with this team.
No, for sure. You saw them have all those very tight games against some really good teams. Baylor, Gonzaga come to mind. It was great to see them finally finish one out in a special way. Hawn, what's your biggest takeaway from the victory against Kansas?
Going off that leadership, I thought Iowa State's biggest strength was their ability to respond, not only just, especially in overtime, second half, but even in that first quarter. Kansas had opportunities to keep ringing up the score. Kansas, they brought the ball down, and seemingly they couldn't be stopped. They out-rebounded Iowa State, I think 18-3 in that first quarter. But Iowa State's ability to respond in that second half, not only from Morris and, like you said, the leadership from the seniors, but Prom, his defensive adjustments. You saw throughout the game, if you watched closely, it was amazing to see Prom, and we'll discuss a little bit about that later, but to see him come up with ways to shut down Josh Jackson and really just limit Frank Mason, although it's hard to say you limit him
when he got a career high, but still.
But really in that second half, limiting Frank Mason to just, I guess, shooting jumpers, it saw the adjustments from Prom and company really shined here.
And let's move on into that. Frank Mason, it's kind of the Mason-Morris matchup, if you will. A lot of M's there, try to hold on. But the Mason-Morris matchup is really something we've been just blessed to see these last 4 years. Talk about the finale of that in Lawrence, Kansas. Talk about what that's meant over these 4 years, Ben.
I really thought that was a perfect game to show just how far both these guys had come to stick with it all these years, and shows that their hard work was paying off. And I mean, you look at the game in Ames, and everyone kind of came to the consensus that Morris won over Mason, and then the game at Allen, it's kind of like I was waiting for it. Mason had something to say about it, but I was just really impressed with Monte again being able to. He showed up late at the game, and honestly, Mason didn't. So, I mean, that was just great to see from Iowa State, and I don't know, it just showed how big of competitors those two guys are. But I thought that was interesting, that who won out at the end of the game.
Talk about the Mason-Morris matchup, Hawn.
Yeah, definitely. Eminem here. I thought, and you touched on it a little bit, that through these two matchups, Mason would have the better of Morris. Mason is coming off a really good season, but improved upon that season tenfold. He's raised his stats across every category, and he's probably a little bit salty of missing out on preseason Big 12.
Yeah, Big 12 Player of the Year.
Even being on the all-conference team, Morris beat him out of that spot. So I really thought that Mason would beat out Morris in these 2 games. But yeah, I definitely agree. Morris did seem to have just upper hand in Ames, but with Mason scoring a career high here, there in Fog, it was just really fun to watch these 4-year senior guards just going at each other for the past 4 years with different sets of who they're passing to, who the coach is even, but just to seeing that matchup every 4 years, just kind of different, improved upon, exciting. Just really fun watching that.
Yeah, absolutely. A very fun matchup that we've been able to watch over the past 4 years. Now let's move on. Obviously, Iowa State was able to pull out the victory there in Kansas, and that has done something that I have loved to see. Well, I'm excited to see what you guys think about this, because during these, I don't even want to say turbulent, because it's kind of expected that Iowa State would have the kind of year it's having right now, just on the cusp of what could be a good tournament team. And with that comes a lot of crazy Iowa State fans who thought it would be a good idea to bring out like the hashtag #FireProm, and that even intensified when the Fred Hoiberg getting fired from the Bulls rumors continued, and thought maybe bring back Fred, fire Steve, all that kind of nonsense. That has quieted down quite a bit following this win at Kansas. What are your guys' thoughts about that movement as a whole, and then finally being able to quiet that? You mentioned it a little bit earlier, Hawn. Why don't you keep going?
Yeah, definitely. Well, looking back at last year, going from a team where the focal point was such a transcendent player in George Niang, you definitely do expect a different team system, a different chemistry among these players.
For sure.
Losing out on that player. But with the leadership you had from Monte, with the leadership from Naz being able to be eligible for this year, and even Burton coming off the bench now into the starting role, these seniors have really taken what Prom has essentially put for the team, improved the defense, not changing up too much of what Hoiberg did, but implementing enough new things to where the team isn't stagnant, isn't stale. It shows in the games that they've won and even lost. Like you said earlier, Gonzaga by 1, I think Baylor by 2, Cincy by 1. Those games are all winnable games that you can see just the coaching might not have prevailed at the end, but it was there.
It was there this time. What are your thoughts on silencing the Prom haters?
I'm glad it happened. When you think about it, really, all these guys are still Hoiberg's guys. And you look at what Prom has done, been able to do with them, I think we should just be super grateful for what he's made the best out of.
Yep.
But, we're going to lose, 5, 6 seniors next year, and then I think that's when we're really going to get to see the coach that Prom is. So, all this stuff was just so premature. Prom hasn't even gotten a chance to show us the coach he is. And, we got that Lindell Wigginton coming in. So I'm excited to see what Prom can do, and I think it's about his time to change the style of play. Everybody loved Hoiberg, but we got to kiss those days goodbye. And so I'm glad that all that talk should go away now, because Prom is a really good defensive coach, I've noticed. And I think his style is really going to come into play the next few years, and then we're going to be able to see the real coach he is.
Yeah, I love how you said bring in Liggins. You said he was a really good coach, and he definitely is. I'm excited as well to see how much a recruiter he is. Seeing all these guys come in. I've been a fan of Donovan Jackson, how he's come in, really implemented what he's brings to the team. And as a recruiter, I'm excited to see what Prom can do.
Yeah, and it's really, you said it best, Ben, he hasn't really had a chance to give himself the best available team that he wants out there. This isn't the team he would have hand chosen by any means, but you can start to see sprinkles of the different parts that he's bringing into it. Like the defense has stepped up this year. Of course, you're getting a couple new recruits in there. You're getting Donovan Jackson, which he got to keep going on here at Iowa State, and then Solomon Young, who's a freshman that he was a part in recruiting, all that kind of stuff. So that is definitely a good thing to silence the Prom haters and make sure that everything allows Steve to have his time here. Now, I want to ask you guys the question, since this Kansas win, this is the biggest win in Iowa State basketball history since when?
I'm going to have to say ever.
Ever?
Really?
It was,
Woo!
54-game win streak there for Kansas at Fog Allen. Bill Self, one of the greatest coaches of the generation right now.
For sure.
Definitely had his impact, but to have Iowa State come in, second year coach in Prom, it is such a big win, especially for where the program's at currently, the state that they're at. Like Ben said earlier, needing that significant win, coming off a rough loss against West Virginia the week before.
Yeah, really.
I think just that turnaround in that moment, huge game, huge.
Biggest win since when, Ben?
Well, I look at it more in the context of what was at stake. So I lean towards postseason stuff. If we're gonna talk about biggest win. So obviously biggest win this year, probably bigger than any win we had last year. But I think biggest win since we beat North Carolina to go to the Sweet 16. And I don't know, that was just really exciting for me for Iowa State to take a next step. So I think that was big for our program. And now to see that we can still get big wins 2 years later, 3 years later, that's exciting to me.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I consider that one. That's a very big win. I'm going to go since the last time they won at Fog Allen, 2005, Curtis Stenson, Will Blaylock. That was an overtime game as well. That was a team coached by Wayne Morgan. They weren't really going much of anywhere is what people started to think. Then after that game, kind of turned the tide, got them into the tournament that year. So that was the biggest win since the last time they won at Fog Allen.
Hopefully we can see more of that repeating this year. People starting to think we weren't going anywhere. Maybe this will turn the tide.
Yeah,
exactly.
And definitely this Texas team will kind of tell the tale of how that Kansas game is going to shape this team. We'll keep you guys updated on that score. But, yeah, like you guys are saying, it kind of depends on what the team will do after that win.
For sure. Yeah,
to kind of label how the Kansas win was.
Yeah, see if there's any Kansas hangover, if you will, in that game. But halftime score, 35-29 in favor of Texas. Iowa State went on a 15-5 run to end the first half. So things are improving for the Cyclones after a really bad deficit to start that game. Now, last note on Kansas. Give me your MVP of that game. We'll start with you, Hawn.
Yeah, well, Burton put up the most points in the game for Iowa State, but I'm going to have to give it to Morris.
Yeah,
I don't think Burton puts up those numbers without Morris passing the ball. And really, again, we've talked about it for 4 years, 0 turnovers for Monte Morris, leading the Big 12 in assist turnover ratio conference play. It's something that you love to see the goose egg in the assist, I guess, in the turnover column, but it's something that you almost expect at this point.
Yeah.
For a team that loves to put up kind of crazy threes sometimes, maybe not the best shots, I think those negative plays are really just kind of negated by Morris not turning over the ball, by getting really good possessions off of those possessions that weren't really going anywhere.
No, he turns possessions into great possessions with his ball handling. He was the MVP of the Kansas game, Ben.
I feel like Monte's been outstanding all year, so you could almost argue for him to be MVP of all of Iowa State's games.
Sure.
But just for a different perspective, I think it was great to see Naz doing the game he had in that game, because that was probably his biggest performance since the Drake game almost.
Yeah.
And he hit 2 big threes, I think, after Iowa State had taken the lead. That were old school Naz. So that was good to see.
Yeah, it was definitely good to see Naz step up. To be different, I'll say Deontay Burton, he led them in scoring. And if Iowa State wants to win big games, he has to be on his game. Iowa State can't have a bad game by Deontay Burton and still expect to win basically any game in the Big 12.
I mean, 29 points, amazing, but 6 steals to go along with that.
Yes, absolutely.
Iowa State forcing around 20 turnovers in this game, even 18 here in Hilton against KU. Yeah. Burton has a big hand in that.
All right, and obviously the Texas game, still halftime right there. Texas 35, Iowa State 29. Real quick from you two, what does Iowa State have to do tonight, to come back and beat this Texas team? We'll start with you, Ben.
It's got to stay on the defensive end for me. I feel like you just got to win the battle of the boards and the bigs again. I mean, they didn't really do it against Kansas because they're hitting all those threes, so I want to see a better performance out of that to get them the W tonight.
Yeah.
What do you think, Hawn?
And Ben, I definitely go along with you, but not necessarily win, because with Iowa State lineup, they're not winning the big man matchups, but limit the matchup. Make sure Iowa State versus the other bigs just hold their own. But just really for Iowa State to win this game down 6, listen to Prom. Iowa State doesn't win that KU game without a rousing halftime speech from Prom. I guarantee you that. And Prom is going to come up with one here against Texas on the road, because this is a big game. We have a lot of Big 12 matchups this week that can decide the seeding throughout the rest of the season. So I expect Prom to be loud in that locker room, and I expect his players to listen.
I feel like with the Kansas hangover too, it's almost, people don't realize how big of a game this is. It's the difference between being 6-5 or 7-4, which in the Big 12 is huge.
Makes a huge difference as of right now where the standings are. Some blaring statistics, if you will, from the first half. Iowa State already, they had 11 personal fouls in that first half. That could come to be a problem in the second half. And then rebounds, they are -4, not as bad as one would think, in the rebounding margin thereafter. So we're going to take a break here on Cyclone InCYders, and we're going to come back with some women's basketball talk for Iowa State Athletics as Mary Rominger is going to hop on the desk here with me. Stay tuned. You're watching InCYders.
When I was a young boy, my father took me into the city to see a marching band. He said, "Son,
Welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. Once again, Taylor Mankle welcoming you back into the program. Mary Rominger joining us here as we're now switching from men's basketball talk over to Cyclone women's basketball talk, who are coming off an extraordinary road victory against a ranked opponent in the Big 12 just on Saturday. So let's break down this game at West Virginia, number 22 in the nation, in Morgantown. Huge test for the Cyclones. Why were they so successful in not only a win, but a beatdown of epic proportions, 80-55, the final score?
There you go. Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you have a complete game like they did have against West Virginia, you're going to have great things, especially with the talent that is on this squad. So the fact that they were able to execute that shows exactly what was on the score sheet right there. 80-55, a complete dominance, and that has to do with the complete performance, like I said, from the entire team. And obviously a big game from Bridget Carleton.
Yeah, I mean, this was truly the first game I could say I've seen this season that Iowa State played the full game. They played the full. That's been a huge problem for this team, that many times they've given up a very close game in the third quarter, just kind of draw it off in the third quarter, really weren't able to get anything done offensively. This was not the case in this game. A fantastic game from tip to close. Final whistle. It was fantastic out of Iowa State. Now, going off that, you said Bridget Carleton had a fantastic game. Is she your MVP for this game?
Hands down, Bridget Carleton is the MVP of this game. She had 31 points, 22 of those being in the first half. So her being able to give the leg up in the first half for the Cyclones really made this possible. She had 7 rebounds. Everyone was great, like I said. Complete performance from the team, but she was able to go above and beyond. She was really the catalyst of the performance from the lineup, and that goes to show she was hands down the MVP of that game.
Yeah, 4 of 9 from three-point range, also fantastic for Bridget Carleton. If I had to give an MVP different from Bridget, I think I've got to go with Meredith Burkall here. Meredith Burkall finished the game with, what was it, like 12 points, which isn't astronomical, but she shot 6 for 8 from the field. And when she's given the opportunity from Big 12 teams to shoot, she has to make these shots if they want to win. Many times in the Big 12 play, teams have been scouting off of Mare Burkall, giving her these wide open shots. Mare did very well against one of the taller teams in the Big 12. That was something that Iowa State was worried about going in. The scheme made it for Meredith to have some really good shots. She came through on the offensive end and the defensive end, playing 28 minutes. MVP for me, Meredith Burkall. Now, with that huge win, it's a resume booster. It's something that gets the program going in the right way, the way they want to go, seeing a full game. Is it possible for this team to make a tournament run, a run for the tournament?
Well, we just talked about a huge factor that plays into that. West Virginia. They got a huge win against West Virginia, and that gives them the confidence that they need going into a big game, another big game this Saturday against Kansas State. So with that being said, if they're able to carry on that confidence and beat Kansas State, the key here is to beat Kansas State. And then they come back and play Texas State and West Virginia at home. And if they're able to execute those wins, coming off of a win against K-State, then I think they can definitely make a good run in the tournament. They have the capability of getting hot at the right times, but the big key here is to have success moving forward is to beat Kansas State.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's huge to get the momentum from West Virginia, and it's even bigger that they get an entire week to prep for Kansas State. That game's on Saturday in Manhattan, Kansas, against the number 25 ranked Wildcats, if I'm not mistaken, another ranked team on the road for Iowa State. But one thing, and we'll start moving into breaking down this game, one thing that I feel gives Iowa State an advantage here. Obviously, they won once already at Hilton Coliseum, beat this team when they were 22nd ranked in the nation at home. But obviously, a whole new thing stepping into the Octagon in Manhattan. But I really love Iowa State basketball when Bill Fennelly has an entire week or 5 days plus to prepare for a game. This we saw very evident in their potentially toughest or second toughest game this year against Mississippi State, the number 5 team in the nation, now ranked number 3 in the nation, came to Hilton Coliseum. Iowa State put them a great fight for most of that game, weren't able to finish it in overtime, but regardless, they put up a very good fight in this game. But Bill had 5 days to prepare for that game. When Bill Fennelly has more than 5 days to prepare for a game, you got to love the coaching scheme that's coming out of that huddle. Now, what do you think Iowa State will need to do successfully, Mary, in order to knock off the Wildcats at home for the Wildcats against another ranked opponent?
Well, like I said before, and I'm going to reiterate it, it's huge that they carry on that confidence from West Virginia now onto K-State. Now, they faced Baylor before they faced West Virginia, and obviously they knew Baylor was going to be, they're a beast of their own, they're a tough team, they're large on many different skills other than just size, but they were able, they said in a press conference that Baylor was kind of similar to West Virginia, so they were able to use what they learned from Baylor onto West Virginia. So now if they're able to kind of complete that type of thinking, then they can learn from what they learned from West Virginia on to now Kansas State. So it's just a matter of playing the cards right and being able to capitalize on what they can against Kansas State. But another big thing is just having a big game from who are their big players, and that are players like Shauna Johnson. We need a whole game from her, Bridget Carlton, etc.
And if you had to give me one player to watch on Iowa State's side in this Kansas State game, who would it be and why?
Player to watch. I would say Shauna Johnson, because she has great capability on the rebound. She's one of the most feared amongst the Big 12. So if she's able, last game Bridget Carlton was the one to really step up and make a huge presence. If she's able to do the same, I think she can be a player to watch and really get down in the nitty-gritty, play the rough spots, getting the rebounds, and have a big game.
Absolutely. That would be huge for Iowa State to get their senior Shauna Johnson to have a fantastic game on the road. We will see if they can grab another big resume-boosting ranked opponent win on the road. Once again, that will be this weekend coming up on Saturday in Manhattan, Kansas. That's all we have time for to talk about some women's basketball, but stay tuned to Cyclone InCYders as we're going to be coming back talking some gymnastics and maybe even a little swimming and diving in Cyclone athletics. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Cyclone InCYders. I'm Taylor Mankle welcoming you back. And now we have Rachel Given on the program here as we're going to start off talking some Cyclone gymnastics, a ranked team. Finally. It's been 2 years since Iowa State has been ranked, but officially today they are ranked for the first time in 2 years. What does this mean just for, the morale of this Cyclone squad?
Well, I think going into this weekend against some ranked teams, 13 and 14, I think it'll definitely boost up their confidence, definitely on some of the events that they kind of struggle on. So I definitely think it's going to boost them up in that way, but I also think it'll boost up the recruiting that they're doing to just be growing and getting better each year to bring in some fresh talent next year.
Absolutely. It will be a huge ploy towards recruiting. Now, before we get into previewing that quad meet that you mentioned against some ranked opponents. We're going to recap what was last Friday tri-meet. Iowa State, again, competing at a high level. They've been competing in their last really 3 tri-meets. They've been competing very well, including last week at home, obviously, against Southeast Missouri and Centenary. What are some events and some competitors that really stuck out to you in this competition?
Well, I'd like to just mention first that vault is something Iowa State struggles with all the time. And this past weekend, they actually did really well. They were only 0.2 of a point away from beating their top, which was against OU a couple weekends ago. So I thought that was really impressive for a team that was coming off of a tough loss, and then Texas women was not exactly the meet that they were hoping for, even though they got the win. So I think that was something I was kind of surprised about. But I mean, Kelsey Paz threw in a double layout into her floor routine finally. I knew she's been practicing it, but I didn't think that she would throw it in so early in the season. So when she threw that in during her routine, I was just blown away, and she nailed it. She did a really good job. So I definitely say Kelsey Paz. Sydney Converse is back from an injury on her leg, and she had an almost flawless routine on the beam, despite her iffy landing, but she really surprised me for her first meet back.
Yeah, the team was extremely happy to have her back, to say the least. Huge hugs and kisses after that one,
And then I think Cassie Diaz is a freshman. She has been doing really well on beam and on floor as a freshman, and she just consistently is in the lineup every single meet, and that surprises me as a freshman. And head coach Jay Renane was telling me that she just works so hard in the gym to deserve that spot, so I'm excited to see where she grows.
Absolutely, and there is a lot of room for growth on already a great Cyclone team, 25th in the nation now. Now let's move over into more of a preview mode. We've got that big quad meet coming up, taking to the road, facing off, highlighting against Missouri, number 13 in the nation, and George Washington, number 14. Then you've also got Lindenwood in there, not ranked currently, but still a good test for the Cyclones, stacking up against some of the good competition. And something that I've been talking to a couple of our color analysts over at Cyclones.TV about is when you play these, or you compete against these better teams, these ranked opponents, like Iowa State did against OU, sometimes the scores are a little higher than when you're playing some of the lower teams, because they don't like there to be that disparity between the different competitors. So do you think Iowa State will have the opportunity here coming up this weekend to put up some high scores?
Definitely. I think that just like the top 25 ranking, I definitely think that going off of their OU scores, some of the best they've had all season, will definitely boost their morale and give them extra confidence this weekend.
And who do you look out for to potentially have a big Friday night for the Cyclone gymnasts?
Haley Young has been doing really well.
Clutch buckets right there.
They really want her to, definitely. They really want her to bump up her floor routine. She's already a dominant on it. Jay was telling me that. They put her in the second to last position this past weekend to kind of push her even more, to throw in some extra flips and twists into her routine. So I'm excited to see where she goes too.
Absolutely. And one gymnast we haven't mentioned yet who's off to a very good campaign this year, Hillary Green. What are your thoughts on her and how she's been steadily improving each and every meet?
Sure. So last season, I know she didn't get much playtime, competing time, but this year she's really just blown me away on the bar. She really knows how to do those perfect handstands and flipping through and exchanging all the bars. She's just definitely been blowing me away.
Absolutely solid throughout the year has Hillary Green been. Now we had some breaking news, if you will, in the Iowa State Gymnastics camp today. Tell the people what good news we all got.
Well, assistant coach Katie Minnesota is pregnant, and they found out they're having a boy today.
A boy. Congratulations to Katie and the entire staff of Iowa State Gymnastics. And now that we've wrapped up Talk on Gymnastics, thanks, Rachel, for stopping by. We're going to now touch on just some additional Cyclone headlines that we have across the different sports here at Iowa State. First off, Husker Invitational recap. The track and field squads headed to the Husker Invitational, fared well, had some good performances on long jump in particular for the women's side, and they look to improve on last week's performance this week as they will be in the Lead Rec Center in the Iowa State Classic. So make sure to check out all that action there. Of course, we've got some women's golf updates. They were competing over the weekend into today, and I believe finished 7th in the UCF Invitational. That was a good performance out of the Cyclone women's golf team there. Some score updates for men's basketball. We'll get you the latest one before we finish the show, as Iowa State still trailing there in the second half. Of course, swimming and diving, we've got some stuff coming up for that. We'll have more in-depth breakdown from probably Rachel here in about a week, as the Big 12 championships are coming up on the 22nd of February. Tennis off to a decent start to their season, 3-2 overall, coming off a tough weekend with a good win against Montana, but a tough loss against the Hawkeyes of Iowa in Iowa City. And then softball, their season starts this Friday. Make sure to check out for that. They will be on the road for quite some time before you're able to see them at the Cyclone Sports Complex, but their season officially starts in Louisiana on Friday. Make sure to stay up to date with them. Wrestling, obviously the big headline there, Kevin Jackson stepping down as head coach there, but they've got a big weekend upcoming as they will travel to Pittsburgh and West Virginia over this weekend. Big weekend for Iowa State wrestling to see if they can continue to work on and give themselves the best they can as March is coming around. And of course, your final men's basketball score update: Texas 45, Iowa State 37 right now, about 15 minutes left in this second half. And that's all we have time for here tonight on Cyclone InCYders. For Hawn Wong, Ben Olson, Mary Rominger, and Rachel Given, I'm Taylor Mankle, wishing you all peaceful regards.